This is The Last of Us Part 1. It was released in 2022 by Naughty Dog. It is a remake of the original game. In this video, we will look into clever tricks that were used during production, what strategy they used to approach some environments, how they blended materials, and how they could streamline their texturing process across the team. So let's look once more into the work of Matthew Trevelyan-Johns, the principal artist. This part is going to be all about vehicles. Technical artist Alex Rivera handled the rigging and skinning while he maintained focus on the appearance of the bus itself. He modeled it previously, and so most of the work was on the unique shader setups for the dynamic series of events. So yeah, this is the actual bus with the wireframe. Here's a wireframe render of the bus exterior. He actually modeled an earlier version of this for Last of Us Part 2 years ago. And it was the very first test vehicle that he used to demonstrate the face weighted normal plus decals plus wear mask approach, which is great. Lots of techniques, lots of advanced things to learn from this. The interior was not really seen much in regular play, and so I squeezed a lot of details into an atlas texture, which is smart. For this scene, he then layered on additional shader features, masks, and effects to add the extra up-close detail we needed. So let's read this. Here, took an optimized approach to the texturing of the bus interior, creating a small 1K atlas to handle all the materials. Then rolled on additional layers in the shader for dirt and wear, as well as some more advanced wetness effects for the final look in-game. So since it was an atlas and there's so much reuse, this is how it was possible that it looks this good with such a small resolution 1K texture. It could pack so many. So you see, right? It's nothing is unique almost, right? So this is how it could be achieved. But this is very interesting to get this insight. And you see also the edge density is not so great because there wasn't a lot of vertex painting needed. So it's fairly low poly, as you can see. So the final version, Alex added some great details like animating cloth indestructible handrails. Another one is the tank. So the tank that the artist designed for Last of Us Part 2, made a comeback for this game. It based the design on a mix of the British Challenger, the American M1, and the Italian Ariete to create a new hybrid that would be unique to the Last of Us world. So this is quite frequent, quite common in video games. Artists and art directors take many different references and then they blend and patch stuff so it looks good, it looks cool, and it looks unique. So there you have it, straight from the artists, all the references. The tank itself was 80K triangle, and the additional supply bags provided by the outsource partners, right? Those things here, all the stuff here, because this is time consuming. This was sent to an outsource studio, were 10K triangles. So he used a mixture of his favorite techniques: bake kits, decals, mid-poly, wear masks, and multi-layered shaders to complete the look. So that's a lot. That's a lot of stuff. And I mean, it looks really, really good. Here's a little look of the BRDFs. The tank could also be posed with armor plating removed, tracks damaged, and the turret rotated. A few times the turret was aimed in such a way to help tell a story of the destruction present in the world. So you got wireframes, you got the... Oh, sorry, the ref board is in the way. Okay, it was loading. So we got the wireframe, we got the full BRDF, which is the same pass that we saw earlier, the base color, so the albedo or the diffuse, the roughness, and then again the wireframe. And here we can appreciate the modular aspect of building such assets. Here are some of the pieces he baked from high poly meshes and textured in Substance Painter. This is one of the favorite parts of his favorite parts of the process, and he tries to do it on a lot of assets per project. Of course, when it requires some intricate little pieces, yeah, it's a good thing to have them baked, and probably they are sharing the same map, so it's not so costly, right? They are packaged together. It's kind of a kit bash, or we don't really call it. I mean, it is modular kit. It is a modular kit. There are many names for these things, so this is definitely what this is. So we can see a lot of details in the texturing, and we can see all the small little parts. Now onto more vehicles. So this is an interesting one. The burnt shell vehicles required a different pipeline and shader setup. I never spoke about it before, but it was extremely challenging to put together. These skeletons of long burned vehicles would litter the world of The Last of Us Part 1. And the shader is so realistic, honestly. It's you can tell it's highly complex. Like there's a lot going on in this shader. So texture were always limited to 1K maximum. So my 1K would have to stretch to cover all baked elements. All other layers would usually have a 1K diffuse and a 512 support maps. Authoring for lower resolutions can be challenging, but rewarding too. So this is very impressive, but it's all about, I mean, it's all reused, right? It's all like, I'm not saying it's easy or anything like that, but it like the shader will cover pretty much every surface. It just needs to do its thing and look like the real thing, right? Here you have a very interesting one here. Studying the reference, most vehicles that survive flames end up as burnt, ashy husks. But to add a little flair and color breakup to crowds of them, I added a subtle flaking paint layer into the shader, which could change its color based on placement. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. To add something interesting, a little bit of, a very important detail, because there are so many of them, right? So just so that it breaks up the repetition, I built a modular kit of parts that would be used across all burnt shell vehicles, 10 in total. Twisted, charred steel was represented with low poly bakes and trims, and all could be posed, swapped to create new and interesting looks for all vehicles. So yeah, then again, there's no secret in modern games. Modularity is just a must, because you can reuse it over and over and over. The cost is not multiplied, and it's easy to use, and there are many techniques in addition so that it doesn't just look exactly the same. At one point in the game, Ellie and Joel meet Bill, who gives them a pickup truck. So this is Bill's pickup. I worked with our amazing outsourced artists and vendors, instructing them on my new cutscene vehicle modeling and UV pipeline before reviewing and correcting the models. So that is very interesting. Those were for the cinematics. Then focus more on the texture shader pipeline for the truck. We often saw the interior in extreme close-ups, so I used a mix of tiling plus baked maps, decals, face weighting, alongside other techniques to ensure the quality held up. And I mean, we can basically feel the texture here, right? So we can really see it even from here. The details, this difference from the steering wheel to these parts to the dash right here. I mean, this is out of focus, but to this dash panel here. And of course, the early 2000s, late 90s. Oh, I mean, this is late 90s cassette system. There was I'm surprised there's not even CD. There has to be a CD player. But anyway, this is a stupid detail. But it is so highly detailed. So here's a quick look at the breakdown of the interior. examining the textures and the wireframe. Hopefully demonstrates the extra level of detail that I hope to achieve with these cutscene vehicle interiors. Well, it really does. It's so detailed. It looks so good. And you see that this is high poly. This is for cinematics, right? So there are different models used for in-game and for cinematics. Here you have the exterior. The exterior used tiles, bake kits, and a new vehicle clear coat shader setup. I also worked with technical artists Alex Rivera and Charlotte Francis, who added an AO bake and highly detailed smeared window textures, respectively, to complete the look. So this is fantastic, and we have a huge, bigger, larger size screenshot to appreciate the shader work here. Easy Shot in this in-game cutscene had extremely finely tuned lighting. In some cases, I applied shader hacks to improve the shots. For this shot, I added hand-painted AO on the tops of the tires to darken the base color and spec response under the arches. So here. So that is really interesting. And yes, there are lots of, I would say, cheating or hacks or whatever you want to call it, right? Tricks for cutscenes, because performance is a little less of an issue. So this is really, really good to know. Tommy's SUV was rebuilt from the ground up from The Last of Us Part 1. I had a blast working closely with technical artist Alex Rivera. We relied on our excellent outsource partners for most of the modeling, and I handled the full texture and shader pass. So you can see with the lighting, it looks so good. So good. You see all the little details, the roughness. So detailed. The texturing and shading of the vehicles that were not aged and rusted was challenging. I worked with Barry Evans on the new clear coat and car paint shader feature to give us a more realistic material response on the metal surfaces, and it shows. I mean, this looks so realistic. Where the light hits and how it bounces, you gotta appreciate the finer details. Like a lot of people, professional artists included, don't catch all these small details, like on a conscious level in some cases, but even unconsciously, even professionals and people who don't know anything about 3D, they get this information, and they compare with real life. They've been outside at night with in the same angle or similar angle, and they have seen their brain captured that information, and then when they looked at this in game, they were like, wow. And in some cases you can't explain it, but you still understand how amazing this is, right? How realistic and how above the rest that is. And you see all the work that went into it. The shinier response of the clear coat shaders could sometimes appear too reflective in areas of shadow. To counteract this, I created masks in Substance Painter that drove a mud layer in my shader to dampen the reflectivity around the base of the vehicle. So again, so much attention to details. And you see inside, I don't believe this is the mud thing, it's more of a dirt inside, right? That would where the dirt and dust would gather. So this is another part of or in a different mask or the same, so that it's doing basically the same thing. This was for the car paint shader, but same kind of technique was applied inside. There you have it. For the interiors of hero vehicles, I refined a new shading pipeline I began developing on The Last of Us Part 2. Combined baked components with detail mapping, tiling textures, face-weighted normals, and masks to give us much higher fidelity. And you can see again, so you can see the scratches from here. You can feel, even if it's out of focus, you can feel the mesh material on this asset. It's really jaw-dropping. Like, it's really, really so good. Now for something different, still related to cars. Here we can see the reflectivity and surface breakup of the outer glass material. I mean, here you can see it very well with a super strong source of light. And here is the trick. So myself, the artist, and Charlotte Francis of the technical art team painted various masks that I would use in my layered shaders to create subtle surface variation on the outer glass. It's rarely seen in game, but hopefully some people notice. That's kind of a reality of super highly detailed, amazing techniques. This is why it's great that the artist explained it and is showing us so that we can, like, more people can appreciate it, right? Because again, so many people saw these things and understood, like, you feel that something is amazing. But if you can't put your finger on it, I mean, for artists, you can't replicate and you cannot learn if you don't understand it. But again, for the general public, you don't appreciate it. I would say to its rightful level, right? So you have a rim mask used to create a dark border around the edge of the glass shader, like that. Dirt mask drives all dirt and dust shader effects. And streaks mask used to alter the roughness and specular components of the shader to catch the light in interesting ways. Let's take a look. It is working extremely well. And here we have another example right here. We're going to take a look at the video, but before, here's the shader layer fading up and down as seen in Maya. It's quite over the top here, but when scripted in game, the result is subtle and just adds a little extra something to integrate the glass shaders with the dynamic lighting environment. So here we have the video of what was just explained. So we see that this is really over the top. It's an example, but this is in Maya, and it's just to show. It's basically the proof of concept. And then in the engine, it's of course more subtle. Okay, so here we have the work of Gabriel Cervantes, who worked on the sculpting. So he had the opportunity to sculpt some of the damage in the rotunda in The Last of Us. Here's a collection of images showcasing the work done. The Last of Us Part 1 is a huge collaborative effort. Texture and models are shared through the game. Thank you to everyone at Naughty Dog. And he's giving credit to the rest of the team. So let's take a look at the high poly sculpts right here. You can appreciate all the details that went to it. Obviously, this is done in ZBrush. This is an overview of all those pieces that are showcased. And here we have the version in the engine. So this should be a lighting only pass. So what we see rendered is basically everything except the albedo. So there are materials assigned. You see all the cracks, you see the normals, you see the roughness. Also, if you pay attention to the column right here, you see the lighting affecting the assets, but we don't have any color information. And this obviously will be all the low poly. So after retopology, this is how those pieces look. So see how everything blends together with the rest of the environment. There are many other destructed pieces. There's a lot of destruction in this environment. We can see it very well here. But the work of this artist is blending very, very well with the rest. If you are interested in learning how to apply those techniques that we're covering while analyzing those games, I have created a class in which I show everything step by step. I show all the techniques, all the tricks. There are no time lapse, nothing is done off screen. And I take the time to explain what we do and why we do it. I show the best practices, and we are covering a small environment from A to Z. We are showing every single step of how it's done on a professional production. So if you are interested, check it out. There's the link in the description. and there's a discount available with the code provided. We will now look into the work of Jared Sobota. So this is the erosion breakdown. For the level, alongside my modeler Anthony Vaccaro, we took this level from start to finish. The work I did consisted of texturing, sculpting quite a few rocks, creating shaders, all blend work and application of the shaders, UVing, and additional modeling work. So this is very interesting because in AAA studios, in some, artists will be really focusing on one, like either modeling, like Anthony Vaccaro was like specifically a modeler. I don't know if he did also texturing, but for the case of this artist, he did many things. As a principal artist, it's not very surprising because he had probably more of a say and impact on the pipeline. So that's probably why he was doing shaders, texturing, and modeling. But this is very interesting. So let's jump into the post. So again, I have the same image here from Tommy's Dan. So that's the name of the level. In this breakdown, we're going to discuss erosion and how we built out the level utilizing prototype mesh with the terrain geo as well as the rocks. So we see two different screenshots along with the material used. Let's look at this beauty shot. Let's start by breaking down this little chunk of Tommy's dam. Here is a little vignette version of the previous image. So a vignette diorama, it's taken out of the context, taken out of the environment itself. So we can see this little piece, which is very interesting because we can see right here, the parts highlighted in blue represent the terrain geo. The rest of the assets are all separate instance assets placed in the level by Anthony Vaccaro. So this is basically your landscape that's been sculpted, and then everything around are assets placed strategically. So this is very important to understand. So those are the assets. Here's an example of some of the mesh prototypes that were used throughout the level to build out the eroded embankments. Credit to Anthony Vaccaro for modeling out most of these assets. So you have, of course, the large cliff pieces, which are it's pretty much impossible to do with sculpting the environment. But then you have all those parts on the ground level, which are super important for breaking down. It's never really going to work with the landscape sculpted and the material on it. You have to add foliage and you have to have those assets also, because organic terrain like that are never even, they're never completely, they are chaotic. And the best way to depict those is to use such assets on the ground. These also utilize a one-to-one bake, multiply down the layers of the material. Here's an example sculpted by Anthony Vaccaro. So Anthony Vaccaro did some sculpting, high poly in ZBrush, and that was baked to a low poly. Next up, all right, let's start with the first eroded earth material I made here. This material works great for simulating a landslide. Wanted to keep the rocks cohesive with my river rocks in my previous posts, so I started with using those. So that's very good to learn and good to understand. If you want consistency in a level, you reuse parts. I mean, in this case, he reused parts of the stones that were also used in the level. So here's the final sculpt. Let's derive at least a simple ID mask. You can see here my largest rocks are all separate. The smallest rocks I did do automatically. we can make this better with flood fill in Substance Designer. So there's a sculpt, an initial sculpt in ZBrush, and then the rest is done in Substance Designer, which is an amazing software. And let's go back here. As this is a dam, there is a river. And in the river, there's the riverbed, right, with those smaller rocks. And to keep the whole environment cohesive, he reused some of the rocks. Probably it was actually those, right, which are the small rocks, which are in between the larger rocks. And he reused those for this environment, either here or there. So that's how you get something that everything, it helps blending everything together. And here we have, well, we have a graph that, of course, we can't see and can't read every node. It's very difficult in Substance Designer. But I want to point out that this graph is extremely clean. Everything is so well organized. Like, this is amazing. If you have used Substance Designer, it's not natural for Substance Designer graphs to, like, they tend to be very messy, and you gotta organize them. You gotta fight to organize them. So that's an achievement in itself. And of course, the material is good. So see previous post about river rocks to understand how I use my ZBrush bake in Substance Designer. So I'm inviting you to go and check out the art station of the artist, Jared Sobora, so you could learn a bit more. But with height and rock dirt ID mask, we're ready to go. So we will take a quick overlook and discuss about Substance Designer, which I believe every environment artist should look into substance design. You do not need to become a texture artist. You do not need to become an expert, but you need to be playing with those nodes. You need to be creating materials, and you will learn so much. It's quite daunting. It's very intimidating. It takes a very long time to master. I don't master this software myself. It's been years I've been using it here and there, but it is fascinating. And there are so many tricks that you can pull. It's more like advanced tricks, but just working on basic materials and following tutorials, learning tips and tricks, like what we'll be doing here, is going to go a long way. So these are our maps on the left. First thing I do is make any edits I need to the stones. Then I add some small scale detail to the dirt, quickly adding surface detail in Substance Designer instead of sculpting it in ZBrush. So for experts or specialized texture artists, there's many different workflows, of course, but there's ZBrush, Substance Designer, and Substance Painter. And each tool has its own little benefit. Being able to use all three and going from one to the other is really gonna bring your art and your materials to the next level. Next step is using my River Rock Atlas with Shape Splatter to add some more small rocks pebbles. The mask color on the right shows just how many rocks I'm adding to my material in Substance Designer. Shape Splatter's height controls are very helpful here. So I recently learned how to use atlases in Substance Designer. There's a great tutorial from Javier Perez, which is on YouTube. It's free. It's an hour and a half long. It's absolutely great. You should look into this if you are interested. Maybe not your first tutorial, but eventually get there, because I learned so many neat tricks, such as this one, the use of Atlas and being able to control each one, modify, and this is just amazing. And a quick wireframe, if you're into that, and we certainly are here at the channel, you can kind of see the displaced geo in the middle on the bottom of the image. So we can see clearly the wireframe. This, I believe, is in Maya. It really looks like this is in Maya. And you can see the geo here and the wireframe on the bottom, which is always interesting. Then we have amazing beauty shots, where we can appreciate how everything blends together perfectly. And we can see the wetness, the roughness, specular, everything that they did to make it look so real. Short video, the artist is saying using the rocks above, he starts by laying out the largest rocks on the canvas to set up the tiling sculpt. Always working from largest to smallest, he starts layering in rocks and sculpting the plane with wrap mode on. Constantly check in 2.5D for tiling. It goes quite fast. It's a time lapse that's going quite quickly, but we can learn so much. We can really understand the process. The artist is starting with Erosion A as a base layer and start painting on Erosion B. Once he has the Erosion B painted, he uses displacement to generate the new mesh. Then he can go in and paint in dirt, mud, debris, and finally moss to unify it all together. Here we have the outcome being blended on our eroded embankment. The artist starts with a base dirt and blend in the eroded embankment. He also has moss, gravel, and some other layers to bring this together. The moss really unifies this all together. We have here the rock breakdown. So here's a look at the large, medium, and small rocks boulders textured in game. All the rocks are using 1-3 tiling rock materials, lichen, grunge, and moss inside of the shader to get this look. You can swap layers in the shader for debris as well. This is pretty good and pretty consistent with the same shaders. Small river stone nano mesh layouts I use for atlases in my riverstone textures. So as you can see, there are quite a lot of those, and it's necessary to avoid repetition and to have a solid base for a riverstone texture. Another trick I used was this singular rock formation split into 5 chunks. See the chunks at the bottom? I can assemble them into one large asset or break it down into many different assets with 6 usable sides for 5 different rocks. This is very smart. And probably the weights handled in the engine is kind of combining, instantiating them, so it doesn't count as many different draw calls. I'm sure there's a trick that the tech team pulled also, and this is the kind of smart thing that that smart people do for reusing and not having obvious repetition in the environment. So really managing the budget to its maximum while preserving very high quality. That's a great trick. Chunks of the large formation split up, always with the scale. So having a human next to it shows us the scale of the boulders. Let's go all the way here. Here you can see the smallest rock clusters used for the river rocks. These are also posted in some previous posts on how I use that. Check out the River Rock post for more information. So check out the artists page on ArtStation and you can see more. Tile rock sculpts. So tiling materials sculpted in ZBrush. Very nice work. And this is awesome. The wireframe are really telling. I hear so often students asking, what's the poly count for X, Y, Z, for, you know, a piece of architecture, for rock, for a tree, for this, for that. Well, there's no set answer. And as you know here, we don't have an answer for the poly count, but The answers are here. And also it's contextual, right? It all depends on the usage, but it's, you use as many as you need, and as much as you can afford. Basically, that's the ultimate answer, depending on the context and the reality and limitation of the project. But this is always great, and you can see there is a lot. And now, of course, there's a question of LODs to consider, of course, but this is just very interesting and very informative for young artists. How much geo for my rock? Well, look, if you want it to look as good as it can, for your portfolio, right? Because these guys are not just working for their portfolio. This is for real production with real constraints. But if you, of course, for your portfolio, you shouldn't have unlimited budget. So that should be a good target. Model your assets, rocks or organic assets, and take a look at these and compare. Tile sculpts, also from a material the base of the material we've seen previously. Beautiful screenshot. Here's a shot of some of the rocks working with Tommy's Dam. Anthony took this kit and built out a really nice environment, blending all of these assets together. So this is really like a specialty, right? You have some artists who are really specialized with organic, whether rocks, trees, trunks. Foliage is kind of another thing, but it also obviously blends together. Leaves, debris, twigs, branches, like all of that stuff. That's really specialization. Large rock formation I built that splits into 5 separate pieces. The idea with this set was that I have 5 individual large boulders that can be combined into one large formation. That's great. That's really maximum reusability and versatility. Let's check out some of the tileable texture I made. For this texture, I was aiming to simulate a real smooth eroded rock with some undulation. This is the noisier version. Very nice looking, smooth rock. Here we have a rock with some lichen pops. Very highly detailed, very realistic how the lichen forms and hangs onto the rocks. Finally, a smoother base rock material I use on the majority of the rocks on the library. Very good stuff. Here are 2 of the sculpts I created for the rock materials I made. These are a combo of hand sculpted and alphas. Really enjoy sculpting rocks. It's something I'm very passionate about. Well, it shows, and that's why the artist was put in this role, right? There was a lot to do, and he got to do a lot of different type of rocks. So this is really how you become a specialist. You find a passion, a very specific niche in 3D, and you become extremely good, efficient, and smart about it. And then studios are looking for you. And well, I'm sure he had a blast working on this production. It really shows in the result. Next up is texturing. This graph is very simple. Pretty much just add a micro detail to my sculpts for the height map. I try to recreate the fine surface detail as much as possible. Then start the albedo by sampling real-world references. Yeah, albedos are, well, again, I am not an expert with the substance designer and materials in general. I love to work with materials, but I'm not an expert. Sampling real-world reference for realistic materials, for the colors, for albedos, is really the way to go. That's really what I've been doing and learning and trying to do. In this video, the artist is showing blending up the rock in Maya before getting it into the game. You can see he has layers for another rock material, grunge, moss, and layers for wetness. Now we are going to look once more into the work of Jonathan Benainos, who did a lot of work on the materials. So this time we're going to look at the Capitol building materials second part. So right here, here's a reference board of the gazebo we used as main inspiration and the final asset in the game on the left. You can see and appreciate right here. And this is the real life reference. So they really did their homeworks and it paid off. Here is how I achieved the look of the gazebo using multiple materials. Based on metrics, I created two trims matching the scale of every ornate part, a stone wall and a tiling flat stone surface. All these materials blend with cracks, moss, and wetness. This is really well illustrated. We can clearly understand that this documentation is just phenomenal. Thank you so much. We can learn so much from this. So if you ever have to tackle such a challenge, well, that would be a good way to approach it. Here is an overview of some of the elements from the height library I procedurally created on the project. Having all these shapes and patterns available to kitbash ornamental textures in Designer truly helped me to speed up my process down the line. That's really, really good to have. So yeah, many artists, many specialists of Substance Designer, they build libraries, right? Often in pre-production, aside from establishing the pipelines, testing the engine, helping programmers develop tools, um, this is a very good thing to do, right? Pile up the library, the material library, because you know you're going to need all these things. So there's a lot of research, gathering of references, which is the case at every level on every production. But this is really strategic, right? When the deadlines will be short and there will be so much to do, well, if you prepared correctly and you have a solid database, then you're going to have a strong edge and you're going to be able to make it. Here's a reference board of the monument we used as main inspiration and the final result in the game on the left. So you see there's always, of course, some translation or adaptation. There are many more soldiers depicted on the real monument, but it would not have translated very well. And you see what they did actually. In order to not just cut all of them, they did some completely in 3D and another row, if you will, they're much more flat, but they're not 2D flat, but they're much flatter. And so we have the illusion of having many men when in fact there's not that many. Then we have it here. Close up. Here's how I achieved the look of the monument using multiple materials. Based on metrics, I created two trims matching the scale of every ornate parts, a column and a tiling flat stone surface. All these materials blend with cracks, moss, and wetness. So of course, it's very similar to the other one because it's next to it in the same environment, in the same condition. But that's, again, such great documentation. We can see and understand very clearly. So here, after creating the shader in a proprietary software, I'm blending the different layered materials using vertex color. It allows me to add cracks, moss, leaks, and wetness to my assets. This is, of course, Jonathan Benainos. Just like mentioned previously, he's blending the different layered materials using vertex color. Also, It allows him to add cracks, damage, moss, leaks, and wetness. Note that all the baked parts use the same layering shader system. Here we are looking at the museum exterior materials. So we have a wonderful screenshot with the different materials, and we're gonna actually focus on these materials. So we are going to take a look at a tool that they developed, that the artist developed, in order to generate, it's actually a generator in Substance Designer, to generate basically infinite custom decals. And it's just absolutely wonderful. So here is a video showcasing the rebar generator that was created on the project. The graph comes with quite a lot of exposed parameters and allows the artists to procedurally create different type of decals as well as stylable textures. So this is a very versatile material that allows multiple types of tileable materials along with decals. Here is another video showcasing the shader and blending work done on these painted walls of the reading room. Each RGB channel of the vertex color allows the artist to paint different texture set he created according to the way the shader has been set up. After creating the shader in a proprietary software, the artist is blending the different layered materials using vertex color. It allows to fade the edges of the carpet and add stains, gravel, wetness, etc. So that's it for this video. This concludes The Last of Us Part 1. Stay tuned. There is going to be videos on The Last of Us Part 2. And of course, if you missed out the first two videos covering the same game, showing different techniques, different part of the pipeline, make sure to watch those videos. They are all unique, even though they are covering the same game. So next up will be The Last of Us Part 2. And then there are many, many great games that I will be covering along with new content. So thank you very much for watching. Make sure to subscribe, add a like, it helps with the algorithm. Thank you so much.